100. It's the Welshes, and I'm joining for the next couple of weeks because we're talking about legal issues, and I'm a lawyer, so that's why I'm here. I hope everybody had a great weekend. We've had a lot of holidays and special events lately: Easter, Passover, the Holy Festival.
Got one coming up too,
And
no?
we have Ramadan coming up this week. So if you have observed any of these special occasions, I hope that you were able to, touch base with your roots and enjoy yourself. And anyway, let's get going.
Yeah, let's do this. Okay, so we
Okay.
have it on student view, so we're going to go right into our weekly assignments. Okay, and whoops, sorry, went too far because that's what I did. There we go. There it is. Do GERO 200 weekly assignments, and I'm just going to click. I'm not going to talk. I'm talking right now, but I'm not going to talk much.
He's my guy.
Yeah. All
So
right.
he's going to help with my tech here.
Okay, so where are we out here?
We are talking week
right
12,
here.
week 12, starting
Awesome.
today, due next Monday.
Alrighty.
Julie does power of attorney.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
so
Can we do this right here?
yes, go into the NIA reading. So we have a really short reading that just gives you the highlights of what's important about how advanced directives and planning for end-of-life issues, planning for situations where you might not be able to make your own healthcare decisions. And most people know that they need these documents, but a very significant percentage of our population in the US has not yet gone through the steps to get them. And there's really no reason not to have an advanced directive because you can get free forms off the internet from reliable sources. At the end of this NIA document, there are some links to a couple places that I recommend. So you don't need an attorney to get an advanced directive. You can do it on your own for free and have it in place. Anyone over 18 should really have one. We put one together for our kids who are 25 and 19. John and I have it set up. So it's really a good idea. And it's a gift that you can give to your families and they can give to you at the end of life if you've had these conversations, even though I know it's really difficult to have conversations about end of life. But I think the world is kind of opening up and we're seeing more countries around the world start to use advanced directives. So the purpose of an advance directive is to express your wishes for end-of-life care. And there's a couple different ways that you can do that. Medical treatment for end of life, you're not capable of making those decisions. You can have a living will, or you can have a durable healthcare power of attorney. You can have a DNR, which means do not resuscitate, or some other things. So basically, with a living will, you're dealing with really basic issues. Do you want CPR or not if your heart stops beating? If you're taken to the hospital and you can't breathe on your own, do you want to be put on a ventilator or not? Before COVID, I think a lot more people would have said, no, I don't want to use a ventilator. And then we started dealing with this pandemic, and some people did need a ventilator temporarily, and then they were able to recover. Do you want artificial nutrition and hydration? So if you are basically terminal end of life stage, I think there's a human instinct of, yes, I still want to have food and water, give it to me even if it's by a tube. But what we know from the end of life is that sometimes you can just prolong someone's suffering by continuing to give them nutrition and hydration. And people that are, say, on hospice, the hospice agencies will frequently say, we don't recommend artificial hydration because especially someone who's bedridden, the water collects in their lungs and it makes it hard for them to breathe. So
Right.
these are big issues.
So, and these are right here, just they expand upon what she's saying.
Yeah.
So do some reading, but we don't need to go through
Yeah.
that.
One thing to know about CPR is that if you're young and healthy and your heart stops, CPR is probably going to work well for you. If you're a cancer patient or if you're closer to your end of life, there's probably a very small percentage chance that CPR will actually restart your heart and work. So it's a conversation to have with your doctor. Now, hospice care versus palliative care, I find that many people don't understand what these things are. If you are terminal and your doctor expects you to pass away or die within 6 months, your doctor might recommend hospice care, which is designed, you're no longer going to get treatment for your underlying condition that makes you terminal, but you will get help with comfort. You'll get help for pain. You'll get help for difficulty breathing. You might get medications for anxiety if you're experiencing issues in that sense. You'll have nurses that come to visit you. Usually hospice care is offered in your own home, but it can be done anywhere. Palliative care, you can be on palliative care 10 years before you're terminal. You may be someone with metastatic cancer that's expected to live for quite a long time, many years with treatment, but you might need palliative care to keep you comfortable. And so a lot of times a doctor will suggest to a patient, hey, I'd like to get you in touch with our palliative care team. And the patient's like, oh my gosh, does that mean I'm dying? No, it doesn't mean you're dying. It just means that you have symptoms that could be dealt with special care, maybe difficulty breathing, maybe, fluid in your abdomen, just things like that.
Painkillers.
Yes, if you're having chronic pain. So palliative care is something that you can have at any point in your life. Hospice care is something that you typically would have within the 6 months before
It gets all your ducks
die.
on the line, though. So when you're in there, so that you don't have to keep going back to the doctor. I need a prescription. It's all like that. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So now we said for your advance directive, you can have a living will, which is something that you sign. It's directed to your doctor. It gives your doctor specific instructions. I do want CPR. I do want artificial nutrition and hydration. I do want a ventilator, or I don't. That is kind of a limited document. It's only dealing with, very, very end of life, life or death situations. I personally prefer a durable healthcare power of attorney because it gives you more flexibility. And so that's what we've put together. I've named John my agent. So just like you hire a real estate agent when you want to go out and buy a house, I've made John my healthcare agent. So if I am not able to make my own decisions, then John can make decisions. And we've had many, many conversations about what I would like and not like and what's important to me and what my values are. So it's very, very, I think, a good idea from a legal standpoint to have this durable power of attorney for healthcare if you are over 18, so that someone can make decisions for you. Now,
And that's what this word proxy means.
yes. So
legalese.
So what you want to do is figure out who you know. It could be a family member, it could be a friend, that their values, they understand your values, and you're comfortable with them handling these decisions if you're not able to make healthcare decisions on your own. We used to have, my mother was my healthcare agent, but she passed away. So we needed to update our advance directive. And now my 25-year-old son is number one. My 19-year-old son is number two. John's brother, who's in his 70s, is number three. And that's the other thing I like. Make sure you have multiple choices because people move away. Maybe people die. Maybe there's some reason why they can't serve in this capacity. So you want to have a backup plan so that, and being a lawyer, I like a backup and a backup and a backup. So we have 3 people listed in our durable power of attorney for healthcare. When you sign it, you're either going to have it notarized to prove that you actually signed it, or you're going to have 2 witnesses, at least one of whom should not be related to you. And again, there are forms that you can get on the internet that work for this. And you can have a lot of detail in your advanced healthcare, your power of attorney for healthcare too. You can put into that healthcare living will type instructions that say, yes, I want blood transfusions. Yes, I want to be on a ventilator. And quite often what people will say is, I want you to try a treatment, see if it works for maybe 7 days. And then if it doesn't work, then I want to go to refusing treatment. You can have a DNR, a do not resuscitate order. So if you have a DNR, then if your heart stops and you're in the hospital, you're in a nursing home, they know we're not going to restart this person's heart because they're already terminal. They don't want to be brought back to life to continue to suffer. You might have a DNI, a do not intubate, meaning no tubes, no ventilators or respirators, no breathing machines. You might have an indication of organ and tissue donation. If you are terminal but otherwise healthy, you can donate your corneas and donate various organs. So let's see. You might also have something called a POLST, which is not present in every state, but is becoming more and more popular. It's a physician order for life-sustaining treatment. In New York, it's called a MOLST, Medical Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment. So it's like a DNR, but more detailed. So it gives the doctor more options, and a little more detail about what you want. Let's see, I'm looking at my notes. If you have a pacemaker, you might want to put into your advance directive or your living will, hey, if I'm terminal, turn my pacemaker off. And my uncle has something, I have to look at this because I never remember what it's called. It's called an ICD, an implantable cardioverter defibrillator. So his heart was stopping, without warning. So he has something implanted in his chest that gives him a giant, jolt of electricity and restarts his heart if it stops. Well, he's in his early 70s. He wants that to happen. But 10 or 15 or 20 years from now, if he's terminal with cancer, he might say, hey, let's turn the defibrillator off so that if my heart stops, I'm just allowed to go. So once you've got your advance directive, you have to remember, give it to your healthcare agent, John, or whoever it is, your mom, your dad, your sister, your brother, your cousin, your friend, your roommate, whatever, or your girlfriend. Remember to update it. Take a look at it every 5 years and say, am I still close to these people? Things happen. People, like I said, you might be really close to someone and you name them your healthcare agent. And then 5 years later, you're thinking, that's not the right person. My values have changed. My situation has changed. I'm not close to that person anymore. So I don't want to do that. So update it, look at it every 5 years, update it when you have a major life event. If your healthcare agent dies, if you get married, if you get divorced, if you have a change in your health, so you're diagnosed with a serious or chronic disease, then take a look at it. Now, I like a lot of these links. Caring Connections is great. The American Bar Association is great. So you can go online and find some really great forms. And if you even want to, you can email me and I can give you some links to websites that are great. If you have a relative that lives in more than one state, so we have these snowboards that live in the east and then go to Florida when in the winter, you might need an advance directive for each state. So make sure that you're covered no matter where you live. Real quickly at the end of this, one thing that's unique about the US compared to a lot of other countries is we are very big on personal autonomy and independence. So when people get older here, we want to help support them to make their own decisions as long as they're capable. So we believe in that fundamental freedom. And I know it's really different in other countries. And particularly, I have students who come to me and say, well, and in my country, it's very, very different. If an older person is diagnosed with cancer, we don't even tell them that they have cancer. The family makes the decision about their care with the doctor. So I think it's good to just make a note that it is different in the US, and we have this respect for personal autonomy, and we want to preserve an older person's independence as long as possible, and we want to pay attention to what they want. And I do think that's important because when you're 20, your values are different than they are when you're 40, than they are when they're 60, than they are when they're 80. And so your 80-year-old grandmother might have a totally different take on refusing treatment than you might have as a 20-year-old who would say, yeah, I want every treatment possible. So second thing we want to talk about is diversity. I think it's so, so important, especially in a very diverse society like we have in the US, and other countries as well are becoming more diverse, that we take into account when we're dealing with older people. We got to think about what language do they speak? What are their personal backgrounds? What are their cultural beliefs? What religious beliefs do they have? Because that's all going to affect how we communicate with them when we're delivering care to older people. And so both of these videos are, I think, really, really helpful to drive home how important it is to think about diversity and to be aware that if you're not taking into account someone's background and where they're coming from, then you're not going to be communicating well as a healthcare provider, as a long-term care provider.
And you guys are business majors, many of you, so if you decide to invest and create a congregate home, assisted living facility, and you're going to be serving a certain community that the demographics say, these people in this community are mostly Chinese American, then you got to wrap your head around that in terms of servicing that community and their unique cultural needs. And so this is why, we don't all age differently. Everybody has different cultures. We have, large segments of Southern California that have, unique Indian American populations, then we have African American populations. So you have to take that into account in your business plan.
Absolutely. So then at the end, the discussion says, what would you do if you had a facility in Arcadia versus San Clemente, and how would you run these two facilities the same or different? And if you look up under the census data for those two communities, you can see that Arcadia is a majority Asian community. I think the next biggest population is white, maybe the next biggest population is Hispanic. If you look at San Clemente, it's a majority white community, probably 80% white. The next biggest population is Hispanic, and there's a small, maybe 5% Asian. So we're looking at two very different groups of people, and how do we reach out to the people in the facility and honor their culture and their heritage and their backgrounds, and maybe even educate. If you have a facility that's got a bunch of different types of people in it, you want those people to get along so you can try to help do special things on holidays and have special food and make sure your staff speaks multiple languages, and make sure that everybody is getting respectful treatment that they deserve as elderly people.
And the socioeconomics of that particular community too, you can make it look like the Ritz-Carlton, but you know what? You're not going to get very many clients if it's in a community that can't afford it. So you tailor whatever you're doing to your, to your potential client.
Okay, one last thing not related to this week is going from here to the end of the semester. We're in the final stretch. We're in April now, and our last day of class is something like April 29th. So all the quizzes are open for the rest of the semester. All the discussions are open for the rest of the semester. So if you find that like this week you have a bunch of midterms, but next week you don't, you might want to work ahead. Sit down on a Saturday, have a cup of coffee or whatever it is that gets you, in focus and ready to work. And maybe you can work ahead on your quizzes or work ahead on your discussions so that you can finish the semester strong.
And the other thing I'm going to tell you over and over and over again, for your final project, your interview paper, you get out your iPhone, okay? You put it into camera mode and you take pictures, but more importantly, you go into video mode and you save this interview with your parent or grandparent for posterity, because too often people have these incredible Ancestry.com amazing stories that they take with them, and you need, it'll be the first chance to really sit down and get a unique discussion going with your parents or grandparents, and you archive it. So we did it both. We have, for her dad and for my mom, I have probably an hour, 10-minute segments where I asked her everything about her, where she grew up, what it was like, my dad, blah, blah, blah. And then you have that to show your parents, your future children and grandchildren, which is really cool.
Yeah, it is a fun thing. And I will say this, my dad is older and frail, and I mean a little bit frail. He's got multiple health issues, COPD and cancer, and he's just battling with a lot of stuff. When I started asking him questions about his life, he lit up. Yeah. It was so amazing and fun to sit there with him for an hour or two and just say, so where were you born and where did you go to school and what did you do next, and what branch of the military did you serve in? And he was on fire, so happy to talk about it.
It's just cool because we all do it. I remember growing up, I'd see my grandma when I was in my 20s. I'd be, hey, grandma, how are you? Oh, that's good. Okay. Hey, see ya, So this is a chance to actually sit down and engage your grandparents. You know what? You'll find they have so much to say and they have so much interesting information that you probably are totally unaware of. So it's really cool. Alrighty. So
have a good week. Have a good week. Happy Wellness Wednesday.
Look at that. All right. And we'll see you guys.
Fight on.
Fight on.